If you remember, last time we spoke about stress management, because we know stress is a very, very common thing these days. I would say it's rather a very more used, fashionable word. Similarly, we are moving towards mental illness and understanding how it affects youth in specific, in particular, and everyone, each one of us in general. So to begin with, let's first understand what is mental health, right? So mental health is the ability to function effectively. So whether our job is of a student, as most of you would be, or a teacher, as many of you who are listening to it would be, or any other profession, whether we are working, studying, whatever role we have to play, so how effectively, how comfortably we are functioning in that role is what determines our mental health. So productive activities and also the relationship, how we deal with people around us, the significant people at our home, at our place of work, in our schools, colleges, university. So how are we dealing with them? How do we relate to them? And the ability to adapt to change, because life is never consistent. There are changes every day, one way or the other, sometimes in our own personal self, our health, physical health, sometimes in our relationship, and other times another unforeseen circumstances which make it important for us to adapt, to change, to deal with it differently. So how comfortably are we able to adapt or change to adversity is what determines how mentally healthy we are. So with this definition, it's easy to understand what mental illness is. So whatever is mental health, the opposite is mental illness. So according to American Psychiatric Association, mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior. So, or all of these or some of these. It refers collectively to all diagnosable mental disorders. You would have heard of number of mental disorders, and we would be specifically talking in details about depression and anxiety, because these are the most commonly heard mental disorders, and when we frequently in our daily language use these two terms, we should have some idea about the clinical diagnosis of these two illnesses. So all the mental disorders which involve significant change in our thinking, emotion, behavior, thoughts, feelings, and how we behave and react and respond to our situation, and the distress or problems in functioning in these areas. So one determinant, major determinant, whether we have some sort of illness or whether we need help, is that our regular functioning, normal behavior is getting disturbed. So this is how American Psychiatric Association explains. Now there are certain factors which determines whether we are mentally healthy or not. First of all is the quality of relations with family. Now if somebody asks you about the risk factors, like who is more likely to get mentally sick as compared to the other, then one important determinant is our support system. And the support system here we are talking about bonding and connection. That is why it is nowadays psychologists and even research shows it's so important to connect to children, connect to your parents, your basic immediate family, because if our relationship with our immediate family, our parents, our children is strong, then it develops resilience. So the factors determining mental health, the first and foremost is relationship with family. As it's obvious, healthy relations would lead to greater resilience, and unhealthy relations would sort of make you risky towards mental illness. Besides family, the other social relations which are very important are our peers and other social groups. So whether it's your university, college, the group of friends that you have, or your cousins or your neighbors, wherever you feel that you belong to that group, the community that you connect to, if those relations are good, chances are your mental health would remain positive. Then exposure to violence, that's another determinant where whether somebody has gone through physical, emotional, sexual, verbal, any sort of abuse, then one is more likely to develop an illness, because that's a major risk factor that makes it difficult to handle and manage emotions and adjust to the situation. Another risk factor is poor socio-economic condition. So if there's not good enough access to basic amenities, basic services, if the situation is that there is discrimination, if the situation is that there is environmental injustice, then all these factors make us vulnerable, susceptible to mental illness, to consistent, emotional suffering, so to consistent social discrimination. All that leads to higher level of stress, consistent trauma, and hence one becomes liable to mental illness. Then there is exposure to other risk factors, for example, gender inequality, exposure to war, exposure to distress. So there's huge research to show that war veterans, they go through post-traumatic stress disorder. Then there are people who've been through riots, through communal arson. All those people who go through these situations for longer time do exhibit signs and symptoms of mental illness. Then media influence, of course, the gender norms, and most of all, stigma. So if there's a lot of stigma, then one doesn't take help when it's required. I'll be talking more about stigma, and I would like that all those who are listening to this program, at least one message if you can take from this lecture is that it's okay to be mentally ill. It's normal to be abnormal. And because all of us, each one of us, at any time, the way it's okay to have a physical illness and we don't want to be ill, but it's possible. Similarly, we don't want to be mentally ill, but it's quite possible. So that stigma is something we need to get rid of in order to stay mentally healthy and take help whenever it's required. Considering that most of our population is students, let's look at the conditions, the health issues, mental health issues, which are seen largely with university and college students. Depression is a big thing. Unfortunately, 1 in 20 over 18 years of age, if you look around and count 20 people that you know of your age group, so it's sad, but the truth is 1 in 20 has clinical depression, anxiety disorders, social phobia, panic disorder. Like after my practice of 20 to 25 years, more and more cases with youth with social anxiety is coming. Anxiety, generalized anxiety, social anxiety. I don't know why, but it's getting common. Probably the influence of media, the lifestyle changes, that has an effect. So youth often has panic disorders, generalized anxiety disorders, PTSD as well, and of course OCD. So another common thing that's seen with youth is risk-taking behavior. If you look around, look at friends, look at groups in your own classrooms, you will see many of them are open to experimentation. Many of them find reasons to get into substance abuse, especially when they're unable to cope up with stress, and this is getting sadly more and more common with time. Sexual risk-taking is another behavior where there's sort of an impulse, there's sort of recklessness which youth exhibit, resulting in more complications and other stress problems. Perpetration of violence, the way youth get impulsive about or egotistic about how others react to them, how others think about them. So violence comes very, very quickly in this particular age group. Learning disabilities is another very common problem. Unfortunately, in our country, it's not very well diagnosed, and although the school boards are aware about it, and in the national law for disability, it includes learning disability, nonetheless, there are many, many people who are not aware about it, and incidence rates, most studies show there's around 10% incidence rate of learning disabilities, which is huge. So if you know 100 people in your group or in your class, then out of them 10 have learning disabilities at that sort of incidence rate. Another very common mental illness that's seen in youth is eating disorders, and whether it's bulimia nervosa or anorexia, it's all largely also related. There are studies to show with media images, and overall one's confidence, self-esteem, ideas of self, that eating disorders are also seen very frequently in youth. Another, as I touched upon earlier, substance abuse disorder is like binge drinking, especially in university. If you remember, last session we talked about the risk factors. I mean, in university, this is the first time of life that we are getting a lot of freedom, able to, there's no structure or control of adults or authority over us. There's a lot of scope of doing things on our own. So the decision making is our job, and such circumstances, when we are living with same age group people and we are new adults, binge drinking, getting into substance abuse, unfortunately even media shows and highlights it as a fun thing or as a glamorous thing, due to which most of the people don't even realize when they get into substance abuse, that it can be a major disease, difficult to get rid of later. So it is also, as we all know, substance abuse, you'll read any day's newspaper and you'll find about road accidents, which are all related, associated with drinking. Another leading cause of death is accidental injuries, unsafe sex, and assaults, sexual assaults. You hear about forced or sexual assault. Largely it's been seen that it's under the influence of alcohol, and because of alcohol consumption, because of leave aside other drugs, of course there are other drugs as well that have effect, but even alcohol has severe effect on our brain functioning, resulting in poor performance, resulting in difficulties in concentration, difficulties in memorizing, etc. So substance abuse is a big thing, and as much as possible, if there are people who are not into it, who have choices, please remember healthy choice would go a long way to help you. So in addition to that, there are drugs, nicotine, prescription drugs. They are also very prevalent, especially people feel that during exams, can't concentrate, can't focus better, so we need one or the other drug in order to stay awake for longer hours and study. These are all very, very unhealthy patterns. Not that youth is not aware of, but somehow they just take it in stride as if it won't affect me. It would affect others, like दूसरों को तो होगा problem, but मुझे नहीं होगा, I'll probably manage. But this doesn't happen, these are drugs. So then studies also show that substance abuse is related to suicide, it is related to sleep issues, depression, and as I mentioned earlier, sex-related harm. So there are all those warning signs related to this thing, this particular disorder, and probably in this disorder we do have a choice. If we stay clear, don't start, be smart, that's what my slogan is. And I would suggest that if you can communicate it to others who are not watching, it'll be a great idea. Then suicide, of course, is a big thing. 2016 data is heartbreaking. At the same time, self-injury incidents. Youth who nowadays, even in school students, one sees that when there is intense emotional pain, when there is any sort of rejection, even simple rejection by a girlfriend or boyfriend, people resort to such means where they begin to or start contemplating or thinking or actually indulging in self-injury. So basically self-injury, if you know people who are doing it, remember it's a cry for help. So unfortunately, when one does that, most of the time don't know whom to reach out for help. So it's just doing it, and if somebody looks at it by chance, then the family or friends realize that something is happening internally. I would suggest be aware, realize that this is an illness, realize it needs help. In Canada, there's Belle Let's Talk. I've got this picture from there. Her eyes ran out of tears to shed, so she forced her skin to cry instead. Friends, mental illness is painful. Emotional pain is really, really hard to bear, especially because it is not obvious. If you have fever, if you have cough, if you have cold, anyone can see and empathize and sympathize with you. But if you are hurt emotionally, nobody can see. And all of us know how to fake it. But when it's too painful, that's what youth resorts to. Let's stop ourselves and look for right sources, right people where we can talk to. WHO's 2018 study says that 10 to 20% adolescents experience mental disorders. Now that's a huge number. Mental illness accounts for 16% of global burden of disease in 10 to 19 years old. Depression is the leading cause, and suicide is the third leading cause of death in 15 to 19 years old. The consequence of not addressing adolescent mental health, why I'm repeatedly giving you data of adolescent, because technically it's 10 to 19. I personally feel most of our psychosocial development, even in early 20s, is similar to that of adolescents. So one can really relate. We are not too far from adolescents at that age when we are in college, when we are in university. So the consequence of not addressing adolescent mental health conditions, they extend to adulthood, as I just mentioned. Mental health prevention and promotion are the key to help adolescent thrive. So this is what I would request. Not only WHO's studied extensively all the countries, which includes India, but as individuals who are watching, if at all policy makers are watching this program, there's lots that need to be done. So in 2017, there was a study on Indian population, and it said that India accounted for 15%, as you're reading along with me, of global disability adjusted life year attributable to mental, neurological and substance use disorders. Okay, so with depression accounting for 37%. So that's huge. The numbers tell us, I mean, when we talk about such big percentage, we can probably even imagine how many life stories are going through misery. And we're talking about youth. So youth, when there's time to, when you have maximum energy, when you have maximum, opportunities ahead of you, when you have maximum time in your hand to fulfill your dreams, and at that time, if a mental disease touches our lives, it's important that we get it treated. Or if it hasn't touched, then we take care of ourselves, as we had discussed in last presentation also, last lecture on stress busting. So that's something we need to take care of. Another, more research, more data, because I think that when we look at reality, otherwise we talk of depression and illnesses in general, often we think, suna hai, we've heard of it, alright, so we move on. But data shows us that it's such a sorry state. So this Asian Journal of Psychiatry published that 37%, 13.1 and 2.4 of the students were suffering from moderate, severe and extremely severe depression in Indian universities. So all the university students who are watching this program, please be aware of your own self, your own mental health, and if you see signs that we'll be talking about in a few minutes of those illnesses, be aware and as much as possible be supportive in taking the person or guiding the person to the right professional. And the findings of this study emphasized the need for immediate mental health support services for about 15.6% of the students who were either suffering from severe or extreme depression at the university. Let's try to understand what depression is. So I've heard people talking, as lay term, using this term in a lay manner, yaar bahut depressed ho raha hu, I'm feeling depressed, yaar life hi badi depressed hai, etc. But when we talk about clinical depression, let us understand some of the indicators, because sad feel karna, feeling sad sometimes is inevitable. Every day is not the same, So there are of course changes. There are times when we are upset. There are times when we are happy. There are times when we are okay. But when we consistently have these signs where there is depressed or sad mood most of the day, consistently we're not able to come out of that state. There's markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities of the day. So if your day is usually scheduled with attending classes, going to the cafe with friends, playing a game in the evening, or just hanging out somewhere or the other in the city or in the campus, or spending some time in the library, whatever your schedule is, if you're not able to sort of get that normal interest in these things which were okay till now, then it seems there is not something okay about your diminished interest. Then another sign can be significant weight loss. When you're not, say, going to gym, you're not doing a diet plan, you're not doing anything specifically to lose weight, but there's weight loss. Or you're not doing specifically, you're not making any changes in gaining weight, and there's a lot of weight gain. So that also comes as an indicator. So a change of more than 5% of body weight in a month, would hint that something is going on, something is not okay with you. Decrease or increase in appetite is another sign and symptom. So if your normal appetite was whatever it has been for years, but you see suddenly that it's not the same anymore. So you don't feel as hungry, or you feel all the time hungry. Both ways, it's an indicator of some underlying condition. Insomnia is a very common symptom. I have a number of youth talking about insomnia, that they're not able to sleep. Most of the youth, by virtue of social media and by virtue of the habits with gadgets all around, they take their own time in sleeping. So they start, their sleep cycle begins, most of them sleep after midnight. And a number of youth that I get in my clinic, they talk about not being able to sleep. And if your sleep is, one is sleep cycle, that you sleep late and you wake up late. Another is the total number of hours is not enough, like just 2 hours or 1 hour nap or 3 hours, which is certainly not enough. And you're not able to feel sleepy the entire day, and even at night you don't feel like sleeping. So insomnia is another sign. At the same time, depression is also hinted through hyposomnia. So there are youth who tell me they don't feel like getting up. They're sleeping the whole day and whole night. So just not able to, they feel lethargic all the time. They want to sort of shun away from work, can't attend classes because neend aa rahi hai. So either way, whether it's insomnia or hyposomnia, that indicates presence of a disorder. Maybe, of course, that indicates that you need to go to a professional. Then psychomotor agitation. Agitation, one way or the other, is also sign of anxiety. You know, you're not able to sort of rest in your body. You're moving to and fro. There's a lot of movement in your limbs, your hands, your neck, your face, your feet. They're all moving consistently. Or there is psychomotor retardation. I mean, you don't feel like getting up from your bed. You don't feel like even walking to college. You don't feel the energy of sort of getting up and taking a bath. So all that things, whether it's agitation or retardation, like any marked significant change in your routine habits can be a possibility of depression. Now, next one, as I mentioned earlier also, feeling fatigued or loss of energy nearly every day. So please remember, I'm sure you would have heard a number of your classmates or friends or people talking about one or the other, but if it is consistent, if it is significant, even if there's just 1 or 2 odd symptoms out of these, I would suggest a visit to a doctor or your counselor in college or a psychologist, whoever is available in your medical center. It's not a bad idea. It would serve you good. Then there's feeling of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, right? So worthless, like मैं तो कुछ हूँ ही नहीं, मेरे से तो होगा ही नहीं, you know, I'm not worth it, I'm not good enough, मेरे बस की नहीं है, मैं पढ़ नहीं पाऊंगा, you know, मुझसे credits नहीं हो पाएंगे, etc. So ये सारे thoughts, ये सारी feelings consistently that I won't be able to do something, I'm not worth it, I'm not worth good friendships, if I don't have people hanging around with me, then there can be feelings that they can be thoughts that, you know, it's something's wrong with me, I'm not good enough. Then even if you do a little bit of mistake, a little bit of experimentation or something, then there's huge guilt that how could I do this? You know, I've let down people, I've let down family, I've let down friends. So inappropriate guilt and inappropriate feelings of worthlessness is another symptom. Diminished ability to think or concentrate. As I mentioned when I was discussing substance abuse disorder, similarly in depression, there are chances that because of your condition, you're not able to concentrate, you're not able to decide, take smaller decisions. You know, you've got up right at the time when it's class time, lecture time. So you have to decide whether I just brush my teeth and rush to class or whether I let it be, miss today itself. So even that small decision, you know, or somebody's invited me to a get-together or a birthday party or whatever, should I go, should I not, if I go, what, like even small decisions become difficult at times to take. So if this is happening recurrently, repeatedly, it is indicating something. Another very common sign of depression is recurrent thought of death, because there's sorrow, because there's consistent sadness, because there's feelings of worthlessness. At times one begins to have thoughts like, I mean, what's the point in living? Like, क्या करना है जी के, क्या ज़रूरत है, you know, and क्या रखा है इस जिंदगी में. So those thoughts, when we begin to think about death and we think about suicidal ideation, and there are people who through media keep surfing about people who have committed suicide, about ways to suicide. If you even hear about your friends or people around who have been doing this, who have been talking about it, who've been talking about death, please, I would like you to ring the alarm bells and find out ways to sort of support the person, either by contacting the family or taking him or her to the doctor, etc., etc. So distress or impairment in social occupation, as we mentioned earlier, is another issue. In anxiety disorders, which is also very, very popular, and the term anxiety is so popular that often students would use it in their daily conversation. However, when we talk about disorder, it shows another signs and symptoms. It shares features of excessive fear, right, and related to behavior disturbances. The excessive fear and worry would certainly result in behavior disturbances. Some of the common and very high incidence anxiety disorders are the ones that are listed here on the screen: phobias, social anxiety, PTSD, OCD, panic, and body dysmorphic. And generalized anxiety, which is one of the most common anxiety disorders, would have symptoms like excessive anxiety. हर बार चिंता हो रही, छोटी छोटी बात की चिंता. Like if I have to go to class, what do I wear? Like something as simple as that which is not going to matter also makes me worry. Or if there's a small decision, which assignment to submit, I am all the time contemplating, thinking whether my assignment is good enough, whether it's right enough, whether I score enough marks. So there's excessive anxiety. Individual finds it difficult to control the worry, and the anxiety and worry are associated with 3 or more of the following symptoms. I've just written here 3. So basic is restlessness, feeling keyed up or on the edge. On the edge मतलब कि सहन नहीं हो रहा, मतलब मुझे कुछ हो रहा है. Often the verbalization people uses, there's something, घबराहट हो रही है. People call it घबराहट, restlessness or घबराहट, बेचैनी. Most of the time it triggers from our stomach, like पेट में कुछ हो रहा है, पेट में गड़बड़ है. So anxiety has direct relation with our body stress. It has signs and symptoms in different parts of the body. Being easily fatigued, that this was also a sign and symptom of depression. Then difficulty concentrating, mind going blank, like in situations of panic. There's an exam paper, you have studied the whole night you've prepared for the exam, but the moment you look at the question paper, you're blank, you don't remember anything, so it's total blackout. So that happens when we are in panic, when we have examination anxiety. And then there's irritability, because एंक्शियस है, बिकॉज वरिड है, तो छोटी छोटी बात पे गुस्सा आना नॉर्मल है. मसल टेंशन रहता है. जब मुझे चिंता है या डर है तो मेरी बॉडी, मेरे मसल्स हमेशा टेंस रहेंगे, सो देखकर बॉडी पोस्चर से भी पता चल जाता है. एंड यू रियलाइज दैट certain body parts begin to feel pain and stress because they're always in tension. Then there's sleep disturbance. Then there is anxiety, the worry, the physical symptom. They cause clinically significant distress, and of course because of that distress there is impairment in social relationship, social functioning. There is impairment in occupational functioning, right? So many of my anxiety clients, they don't feel like going to parties. They don't feel, even though they want to, but the anxiety of like how would others treat me? How would others look at me? How would they judge me? One of my clients had just a couple of pimples, and the anxiety because of body dysmorphic disorder was so huge that some of the best time that she wanted to spend with friends, she wouldn't go. So anxiety is easily comparatively identifiable, and when it is happening recurrently, repeatedly, we need to ring the alarm bell. So people with no experience of this is, I don't know where it is, I just got from Google. People with no experience of anxiety can say things like, life's too short to be sad. Chal na, bina baat ke, itni choti si baat pe bada kar rahe ho, People who do not have anxiety cannot understand what the other person is going through. But finding the courage isn't that easy. Like people say, it doesn't matter, choti si baat hai, why are you considering it big, etc. Chal, cheer up now, as if it was easy, So even if people, whatever they say, you feel you're not feeling good enough inside, there is something that's bothering, there's something that's different, then it's an alarm sign to take help. So if you or any of your friend is going through any such symptom, please remember these things, these points. It's important to talk to someone you trust, whether it's a good friend, a family member, a cousin, an aunt or uncle, a teacher who's empathetic, or the best one, if you don't have any of them, just go to the hospital, the nearest doctor, talk to your family physician if you don't have a psychologist around or a counselor around. But anyone that you trust, you must talk. Seek professional help, stay connected. It's so important. Even if you have stress, anxiety, and the source may be your friends and family, but leaving aside that particular person, you must stay connected with others, must communicate that this is what you're going through, because you need help. Exercise is another great buster, whether it's actual clinical depression, as much as you can. When there's actual clinical depression, it's so hard to move out of your bed. It's so hard to move your body, but that's the treatment. So however hard it is, try your best to move as much as you can. And the best is if you can move even for a little bit, even for 10 minutes walk outside in nature, okay, outside the closed space. It's so important to just move out. Try to eat and sleep regularly as much as possible. That would help you until you reach for help, reach for psychologist or psychiatrist, whoever is required. However, many people, as we talked about substance abuse, they begin the beginning of substance abuse and substance use disorder is when one tries these alternate ways of getting rid of stress. It is not going to help. If you're feeling low, if you're feeling agitated, it might seem to help that very moment, but that's going to make your situation, your condition worse. So as much as possible, avoid alcohol, avoid using illicit drugs because they worsen the condition. Do things that you have always enjoyed. If you have depression or anxiety, even the things that you like the most, you won't feel like. But just try. If you otherwise enjoy painting for hours, try to pick your colors and a sheet and do it only for 10 minutes. Because the more you come to the normal, healthier stuff, the more there are chances that you'll be able to deal with it until, of course, you reach for professional help. Be aware of persistent negative thoughts and self-criticism. The more you think negative about yourself, the more you think negative about your situations, your behavior, there's guilt, there's self-criticism, the more the chances that you'll get into a endless pit, self-pity and the pit of self-criticism, all that is not going to make it easy for you. So as much as possible, be aware of those negative thoughts, and the moment you have that, just tell yourself, stop, I'm good enough. And tell yourself. One very beautiful exercise by my favorite author Louise Hay is the mirror exercise, where you look into the mirror, look into your eyes and tell yourself with faith, with belief that I am beautiful and I approve of myself and I love myself. Those simple 3 words, if done every day in the morning and in the evening, you'll begin to feel there's change. You'll begin to feel good about yourself. And that's the crux of everything. Every other emotion, behavior stems from the thought that we have about ourselves. let me quickly go through the myths, because that's what, when we talk about mental illness, the local term is pagal hai, people don't go to counselors and psychologists thinking कि ये तो पागलों के डॉक्टर हैं. Well, पागल is not the right term. The way आपको, मुझको, the way you, me, any of us can have any physical illness, heavens forbid, we take care, we'll stay healthy, but जैसे आपको, मुझको कभी भी टाइफॉइड भी हो सकता है, मलेरिया भी हो सकता है, वायरल फीवर, खांसी, जुकाम, सिमिलरली बिल्कुल उसी तरह से आपको और मुझको कभी भी डिप्रेशन, एंजाइटी भी हो सकता है. सो लेट्स क्विकली लुक एट इट. लोग कहते हैं मेंटल इलनेस आर्ट रियल इलनेस, दे आर रियल इलनेस, और उसका प्रॉपर इलाज है. ओके, दीज आर नॉट रेगुलर अप्स एंड डाउन्स, देयर इज मोर टू इट. सो when someone breaks their arm, किसी का हाथ टूटे, हम ये नहीं कहते अरे अरे ठीक हो जाएगा, हड्डी तो टूटी है, लटकी तो रही है बाजू, ठीक हो जाएगी. नहीं, हम उसको इलाज के लिए ले जाते हैं. सिमिलरली मेंटल इलनेस इज ऑल्सो अ रियल इलनेस. नेक्स्ट इज इट विल नेवर इफेक्ट मी, मुझे नहीं होगा, सब दुनिया को होता है. हम ये हो we would wish that it doesn't happen to me or you, but at the same time it is possible, like any other illness, that it can happen to anyone. It is just an excuse for poor behavior. लोग कहते हैं बहाना है. It is not an excuse. Illnesses may act in ways that are unexpected or seem strange. दूसरों को अजीब लग सकते हैं, but these are not an excuse. They need treatment. Some people say bad parenting cause mental illness. That's not true. Mental illness is our complicated condition, और उनकी जो etiology है, the causes are different, genetic, biological, environmental. So it's not that only bad parenting is a reason. There are a number of reasons which lead to illnesses of different types. Again, how you feel isn't who you are. So you are a wonderful person. You're feeling the other way and you need help. Remember that. Another myth is people with mental illness are violent and dangerous, which is not true. Violence और danger का कोई good predictor नहीं है. बिना illness के भी कोई violent हो सकता है और illness के भी हो सकता है. So please remember, this is a myth. That's not true. People don't recover from mental illness. There is huge variety of treatments available, both medical as well as talk therapy, psychotherapy. So there are loads of research on treatments, and they work and they lead to productive lives of people who have recovered from mental illness. So this is absolutely not true that people don't recover. People do recover. The other myth is people who experience mental illness are weak. It's not about weakness. It is an illness and it needs help. People who experience mental illness can't work. Well, yes, when they are very, very ill, like if I have 102 fever, I won't be able to work that day. But if I take correct medicines and after 2 or 3 days of treatment, I may be able to work. Similarly, when severely ill, one may need rest or hospitalization. But with right treatment, anyone can begin to work. Kids can't have mental illness, which is not true. Nowadays, more and more children are being diagnosed with depression and anxiety, so it can happen at any age. There is no age criteria for mental illness. Then, next myth is everyone gets depressed as they go older. It's just part of aging. Well, we are not talking about everyday ups and downs. It is not an inevitable part of aging. There are many people who are aged but living a wonderful life, so it is not inevitable. It is not necessary that if you are reaching old age you have to be depressed. Please remember, these myths and many more exclude people with mental illness from our communities and create barriers, because if we believe in these myths, then we won't take the person, or we won't go ourselves to the correct professional and won't get treated. Hence, let's get rid of these myths, and these myths were taken from Canadian Mental Health Association. So, the reasons for low rate of help seeking in university population, there is fear of personal stigma. लोग क्या कहेंगे, मुझे पागल समझेंगे, काउंसलर के पास गया है, साइकोलॉजिस्ट के पास गया है, कोई कुछ नहीं कहेगा. आप बीमार हैं और कहते भी हैं तो कहने दो. ओके सो अगर मेरी टांग टूटी है, लोग मुझे लंगड़ा बोलते हैं, बोलने दो, मुझे तो डॉक्टर के पास जाकर अपनी टांग ठीक करानी है. सो दैट्स इंपॉर्टेंट दैट वी नीड टू गेट रिड ऑफ द स्टिग्मा एंड मूव ऑन. I will not hide my mental illness for your comfort. My existence doesn't require your approval. You need to approve of yourself. You don't need others' approval, friends, at least for going to a doctor. Okay? You need help? You need help. Accept it and get well. Remember, your health is important, and complete health, complete well-being includes both mental and physical illness. So friend, remember, you're not alone. There are a number of psychologists, counselors, helplines. Just Google it and you'll find there are various people offering help, and help is available. I hope the lesson guides you. The lesson helps you understand and learn more about mental illness and look at it in the right way, in the right perspective. Thank you.